salah is the key to the garden. So in reality, right, someone's salah depends on their wudu. Someone's salah depends on the quality of their washing, the ritual ablution, their wudu that they perform before the salah. And that's why they say if someone has waswas and they have misgivings in their prayer, then they should ask themselves, how is their condition of their wudu? Because if your condition of your wudu, you pray with hudur, you pray with presence, is that will affect your salah, because that's the key to the salah. And it's an interesting point that in the hadith that talks about wudu, ablution, the washing, is that it never just says whoever performs the wudu. It always says whoever performs the wudu, yani bil ihsan wa ahsan al wudu, is that they do so excellently. Right? So this is something that we have to remember, that al-tuhur shatr al-iman, is that wudu in of itself is significant and it's an act of worship. And they mention about that great Imam al-Shafi'i. Right? Everyone knows Imam Shafi'i, everyone heard his name, his legacy, it continues to this day. When he passed away in Egypt, one of the righteous ladies, her name was Nafisa, she heard of Imam Shafi'i's passing, and she just says one statement. She could have said, Imam Shafi'i, who was Imam Shafi'i? And she could have praised him without end, but she just said, may Allah have mercy on Imam Shafi'i. He used to perfect his wudu. He was someone who had perfection and excellence in even the smallest fundamentals, or the smallest things of this religion. And the Prophet ﷺ said in a beautiful hadith, is that man tawadda'a fa ahsan al-wudu, is that whoever performs their ablution, their wudu, their washings, the ritual washing, and does so excellently, خرجت خطاياه من جسده حتى تخرج من تحت أظفاره, is that his sins, his wrong actions will leave him from his body, even to the extent that wrong actions will leave underneath his fingernails. Even, in other words, even to the minute effect. And in another hadith, a beautiful hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يحافظ على الوضوء إلا المؤمن, is that no one is consistent and preserves their wudu except a true believer. Is a sign of a true believer is that they're consistent and they preserve their wudu. لا يحافظ على الوضوء إلا المؤمن. In one report, Allah said to Musa, He said that if you find any calamity within your day, and something happens to you, and you're not in the state of wudu, then don't blame anybody but yourself. So, al-tuhur shatr al-iman. And then the Prophet said, وَالْحَمْدُ tamla al-mizan, is that saying Alhamdulillah, praise, gratitude to Allah, fills the scales. What's meant here about the scales in the day of judgment is that there's scales that people are going to be weighed. People's actions are going to be weighed. And some report even indicate that people themselves are going to be weighed. And when you say Alhamdulillah, is that these are great words, and we shouldn't take them for granted or we just say them casually, but we should say them from Samim al-Qalb, and from the depth of our heart. When we say Alhamdulillah, is that we're in a blessing, this is the gratitude of Allah, a praise be to Allah, and He is deserving of all praise. So when someone says that with a heart that's full of gratitude and feeling those meanings, is that has a consequence and that has an effect. And the Prophet ﷺ was telling us, that that effect fills the scales. That effect fills the scales. And it's mentioned that there's a hadith about the scales where the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّهُ لِيَأْتِي رَجُلٌ عَظِيمٌ سَمِيمٌ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, is that a man who's great, he's big, he's even fat, he's going to come on the day of judgment. However, لَا يَزِنُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ جُنَاحَ بَعُودَةٍ, is that he doesn't weigh in the sight of Allah even the weight of a wing of a fly. وَقَالُوا, and then the Prophet said, قَالَ اقْرَأُوا فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا, and he recited that verse. And that there's another beautiful hadith about the scales, is that the Prophet ﷺ, it's called the hadith of the bitaqa, the hadith of the card. And it's mentioned that one of the believers is going to come on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, and he's going to be weighed. And it's going to be presented 99 registries full of wrong actions. And he's going to get scared, and Allah's going to say, did I wrong you? He said, no, these are actually, he's going to confess, these are my actions. And then Allah's going to command the angels and said, he has one good deed, bring forth that one good deed. And that one good deed is going to be written on a card. And then when he brings forth that one good deed, this man says, what's this one good deed going to do for me against these 99 registries of wrong actions? However, when فَتَخْرُجُ بِطَاقَ فِيهَا, and that this card has written on it أَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, is that this card comes and has the kalima written on it. فَيَقُولْ أُحْضَرْ وَزْنَكَ, bring it forth. فَيَقُولْ يَا رَبِّي مَا هَذِهِ الْبِطَاقَةِ مَا هَذِهِ السِّجِلَّاتِ, he says, my Lord, what is this card with regards to these registries? فَيَقُولْ إِنَّكَ لَا تُظْلَمْ, and that his response was that you will not be wronged. قال فَتُودَعُ السِّجِلَّاتِ فِي كَفٍّ, so that they'll place those registries in one pan of the scale. وَبِطَاقَةُ فِي كَفٍّ, and that they'll place this card, this simple card, in the other pan of the scale. فَطَاشَتِ السِّجِلَّاتِ وَثَقُلَتِ الْبِطَاقَةِ, and that all those wrong actions will just fly in the air and be completely dispersed. And that card itself will weigh heavy on the pans. فَلَا يَثْقُلُ مَعَ اسْمِ اللَّهِ شَيْءٍ, is that there's nothing heavy with the name of Allah. The name of Allah is heavier and more significant and more weighty than everything else. And then the Prophet said, Subhanallah walhamdulillah tamla'a ma bayna as-sama'i wal ard, is that saying Subhanallah walhamdulillah fills that which is between the heavens and the earth. And the beautiful hadith, the Prophet said, من قال سبحان الله وبحمده في يوم 100 مرة حطت خطاياه ولو كان مثل الزبد البحر, is that whoever says just these simple words Subhanallah wa bihamdihi 100 times a day, is that his sins will be forgiven even if they're as much as the foam of the ocean. Right? Another beautiful hadith that most of us are familiar with, كلمتان خفيفتان على اللسان ثقيلتان في الميزان حبيبتان إلى الرحمن, is that there's two words, they're light on the tongue, they're heavy in the scales, and they're beloved to God. What are they? Subhanallah wa bihamdihi Subhanallah al-Azim. In another beautiful hadith, the Prophet said, أَيَعْجِزُ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن يَكْتِسَبُ كُلَّ يَوْمٍ أَلْفَ حَسَنَةٍ, the Prophet asked his companions, he says, are you not unable to get 1,000 good deeds for yourselves every day? And the companions, they said, فَسَأَلَ سَائِلٌ مِنْ جُلَسَائِهِ كَيْفَ يَكْسِبُ أَحَدُنَا أَلْفَ حَسَنَةٍ, how can we acquire 1,000 good deeds? And the Prophet said, قَالَ يُسَبِّحُ 100 تَسْبِيحًا فَيَكْتُبُ لَهُ 1,000 حَسَنَةً وَيُحَطُّ عَنْهُ 1,000 خَطِيئَةً, is that someone says Subhanallah 100 times, and it will be written for them the reward of 1,000 good deeds, and 1,000 wrong actions will be removed from them. Right? So at-tahur shatrul iman, and then alhamdulillah and subhanallah alhamdulillah tamla'ani ma bayna as-samawati wal ard, subhanallah and alhamdulillah fills that which is between the heavens and the earth. And then the hadith continues, was-salatu nur, and that the prayer is light. And there's different meanings of the prayer being light. One of the meanings is that if someone didn't have lights, they would be misguided. They would be lost. If you're in pitch black, dark, how will you know which way to go? Right? And it's a metaphor for life, is that if you have light in your life, you'll know what's right and what's wrong, and you know what to do and what not to do. And Allah says this in the Quran, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ, is that the prayer itself prohibits or prevents lewdness and wrong actions. So if someone really prays the prayer and the prayer becomes light for him, is that he will avoid all wrong actions just by the fact that he prays that with the blessing of the prayer. So it illuminates the person's life. It's nur, it's light. Another meaning of as-salatu nur is that it's light, it's physical light. Right? The people who pray, and they pray, especially that they pray in the night, in the depth of the night, is that Allah will put a physical, beautiful light. They have nur, or they have light on their face. And that's why the Salihin, the pious, they said whoever prays by night illuminates his face by day. Another meaning of as-salatu nur is that the salat is light in the grave. There's a statement of Ibn Mas'ud where he said, "Sallu rak'atayn fi dhulmatil layl li dhulmatil qubur." He says, pray 2 rak'ats in the darkness of the night to prepare for the darkness of the grave. Another meaning of as-salatu nur, that prayer is light, is that it's light on the day of judgment. And that there's a beautiful hadith mentioned in Tabrani where the Prophet said, whoever prays the 5 prayers in jama'ah, in congregation, will cross the sirat, will cross the bridge like a flash of lightning. So the prayer is light, as-salatu nur. And then the Prophet continues in this beautiful hadith, وَالصَّدَقَةُ burhan. And that charity is proof, is a proof. A burhan is a proof. Right? Where's your burhan? You bring forth evidence, and that's your proof. And actually the word etymology of the word burhan, it relates to the rays of the light. In other words, they're so clear, it's something so clear that no one can deny it. And so a sadaqah to burhan is proof of what? It's proof of what? There's different meanings. One of the meanings is that it's a proof of someone's iman. Because what someone loves and what someone truly believes is that they will spend on that what they truly believe and what they truly love. That's why they say, al-iman bila infaq, nifaq. Is that faith without spending is closer to hypocrisy. Right? So it's a proof of someone's faith. And that's why, again, there's another beautiful hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, he says, no one gives zakah, his zakah, his charity tax, right, yearly, right? No one gives that zakah in good spirits, that they're happy to give the zakah. They're not just saying, oh, it's just another tax, let me just get this over with. Rather, no, they're happy, they're joyous to performing this act of worship. No one gives zakah in that condition except the true believer. Right? It witnesses their faith. Another meaning of as-sadaqah to burhan, that charity is a proof, is that it's a proof on the day of judgment. It's a proof on the day of judgment. When Allah says to all of us, how did you spend your time? How did you spend your youth? How did you spend your wealth? Where did you acquire your wealth? Is that if someone who gives charity a lot frequently, is that they will say, Ya Allah, I spent it in charity. I gave it to the masjid. I gave it to those in need. I gave it to charity. And that will be a proof for them. And that this masjid, it needs help. They want to expand. Look at the services that they're giving. Is that people should encouraged to give charity, and that will be a proof for you. And even if you look at it, that sadaqah is a proof. I think you could take this as a general principle, is that where a person spends their money, is that that's what they value. Where a person spends their money, is that's what they value. And I was reading from a book called Mastery, and that the chapter I have here is called America's War Against Mastery, in Ihsan Itqan, doing things well. And he says, our society is now organized around an economic system that seemingly demands a continuing high level of consumer spending. We are offered an unprecedented number of choices as to how we spend our money. Sure, we have to have food, clothing, housing, transportation, and medical care, but within certain limits, we can choose among many alternatives. And then he says, we are also enticed, this was in the 90s, by a dazzling array of appealing non-necessities, VCR, vacation cruises, speedboats, microwave ovens. And he says, every time we spend our money, we make a statement about what we value. There's no clearer or more indication than this. Right? So, sadaqatul burhan. And then the Prophet continues, and he says, al-sabru diya. And that patience is illumination. It's another word for nur and diya. You can translate them as lights. But here we'll translate as illumination. And why is patience, why is that illumination, why is that light? لأنه يضيء حياة المؤمن في شدائد الدنيا ويزيل مرارة البلاء. Because if someone has patience, they have perseverance, is that whatever tribulations that they have in their life, again, they will find the right way to go about it. They'll respond in the right way. They won't panic. They won't say, you know, people say, "Na'udhu billah, I'm mad at God," or something like that. They won't say anything like that. They'll have rida. They'll have contentment with the decree of Allah. And something very interesting. What's the difference between nur and diya? Right? They're both, generally speaking, can be translated as light, but there's a subtle difference between the word nur and diya. And the Prophet said that the salah is nur and patience is diya. It's also light. Is that nur, the word nur, light, is that that's light that has no heat. Right? So celestial light is light that has no heat. Whereas diya is light with heat. Right? So the light of the sun is that you won't say that the light of the sun is nur, you say that it's diya, because obviously the light of the sun is intense, it has heat. Whereas the light of the moon, you say that that light is nur. Right? And in expressing that salah is nur, is that salah is something that's calm, and there's no heat to it, it's peaceful, it makes you tranquil, it relaxes you. Whereas patience, there's heat, you have to struggle. Right? You have to, and you know that fire burns, purifies. Right? Patience, there's struggle involved. And Allah says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, is that seek assistance with both lights, with the tranquil lights and the struggling sabr, salah. Right? So as-salatu nur was sabr diya. And the scholars mention that there's three categories of patience. What do we think about when we say patience? What does that mean, patience? Is that there's obviously the first thing that comes to our mind is something, afflicts somebody, and that they remain calm, and that they don't disobey Allah, they don't do something that's rash, or they don't do something that harms them. That's one meaning of patience. Another meaning of patience, which is really important, is that someone has perseverance in the obedience of Allah. Is that day to day they're waking up for their fajr. If they can wake up earlier, that's good. Day to day they're avoiding things that they know that they should avoid. That takes struggle. That takes patience. Right? Your nafs, your lower self might want that, but you have to refrain it by having patience. Just wait, be patient. Not now. And also patience in avoiding those things that are prohibited. That also takes patience. And that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, what did he say? He said, "Ala inna sabra min al-iman bi manzilat al-ra'si min al-jasad." He says the proportion or the ratio of patience to faith is the rank of the head to the body. فَإِذَا قَطَعَ رَأْسَ بَعْدَ الْجَسَدِ. Is that obviously if someone's head is severe, decapitated, is that there's no more life in that body. Right? And he says, ثُمَّ رَأْفَ صَوْتَهُ. Then he raised his voice. فَقَالْ أَلَا إِنَّهُ لَا إِيمَانَ لِمَنْ لَا صَبْرَ لَهُ. Is that verily someone who doesn't have true faith, who doesn't have patience. Right? Who doesn't have patience. And again, we mentioned those three meanings of patience, as that relates also to taqwa. And then finishing up, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَالْقُرْآنُ حُجَّةٌ لَكْ أَوْ عَلَيْكَ. Is that the Qur'an is either for you or against you. What does that mean? It's based on the verse, وَيُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. As Allah says that He reveals this Qur'an, which is a healing and a mercy for the believers. However, right, it's not neutral. Is that it doesn't increase those who are wrongdoers. It doesn't increase them except in loss. So the Qur'an is not a neutral book. It's either for you or against you. And one of the righteous said, he says that no one sits with the Qur'an and then stands up, except that either profits or he loses. Right? He profits if he read and he understood, or he loses if he was just reading, he wasn't concentrating, he wasn't thinking, he was distracted, or he didn't take its message. Ibn Mas'ud, he said that the Qur'an is an intercessor, which will be granted intercession on the Day of Judgment, and a disputant, which is believed. And Ibn Mas'ud carried on, he says, it will lead whoever puts it in front of him to the garden, and it will lead whoever puts it behind his back to the fire. And then the Prophet ﷺ will continue this hadith in the second khutbah. Allah Azza wa Jalla يقول وبقول يهدي للمهتدين جل في الأولى وإذا قرأت القرآن فاستمعوا له وأنصتوا لعلكم ترحمون. وقال عز من قائل الكريم فإذا قرأت القرآن فاستعذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم الكريم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما. That as you all can see, that this is an extremely comprehensive, beautiful hadith that is rich in meanings. The Prophet said, الطهور شطر الإيمان, that purity is half of faith. وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ تَمْلَأُ الْمِيزَانِ, and saying Alhamdulillah fills the scales. Subhanallah walhamdulillah tamla'ani ma bayna as-sama'i wal-ard, and Subhanallah walhamdulillah fills that which is between the heavens and the earth. وَالصَّلَاةُ نُور, and that the prayer is light. وَالصَّدَقَةُ بُرْهَان, and charity is a proof. وَالصَّبْرُ ضِيَاء, and patience is illumination. وَالْقُرْآنُ حُجَّةٌ لَكَ أَوْ عَلَيْكَ, and the Qur'an is either in your favor or against you. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ النَّاسِ يَغْدُو فَبَائِعُ نَفْسَهُ فَمُعْتِقُهَا أَوْ مُوبِقُهَا. As that the Prophet said, every single individual goes out, proceeds on their day, and is a vendor of their soul. They sell their soul, so as to speak. They either free it or they bring it to its ruin. And that this hadith, this last part, is a very comprehensive look at the reality of the human condition, is that Allah gives us opportunities and chances every day. And those who are blessed, they make use of these daily opportunities, and those who are unfortunate, they miss out and they're at a loss. You either make it or you break it. And Allah mentions, what does it mean to sell yourself to Allah? Right? Obviously it's metaphorically speaking, but you give to Allah. You give to Allah from your time, you give to Allah from the wealth that you have, and you give to Allah from your willpower. Right? You decide to submit to Allah and to give yourself to Allah and to His obedience. And Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُم, is that Allah has purchased from the believers their selves and their wealth. بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, and that in return they will have paradise. And Allah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, is that from mankind, from the people, are those who sell themselves seeking the good pleasure of Allah. وَاللَّهُ رَؤُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ, is that Allah is most compassionate and gentle to His slaves. The great Imam Muhammad al-Hanafiya, the son of Imam Ali, not from Fatima Zahra, he said, Allah made paradise, He made the garden the price of yourselves, so do not sell them for anything else. Right? So in this metaphorical language, as that person can sell their soul. Right? Someone can sell their soul, their sacrifice. Right? The meaning is sacrifice. And someone, when you give something, it's like a transaction. When you sacrifice, your transaction, you want something in return. So people can sell their soul to dunya. In other words, they'll sacrifice everything that they have in order to get something in return from the world. But what this is encouraging us to do is that don't sacrifice ourselves for things that are low. Sacrifice yourself, right? Make it for Allah's sake. And they mentioned that one of the scholars, he took this so serious, Habib ibn Muhammad, is that what he actually did as the manifestation of selling himself to Allah is that he weighed his weight in gold and he gave that in charity. And that he took that so serious, and that there's a beautiful hadith that makes this easy, is that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever says 4 times, right? Whoever says once, Allahumma inni asbahtu shirka wa shirka hamlata arshikum wa malaika jami'al khalqik annaka anta Allahu la ilaha illa anta wahdaka la sharika lak wa anna sayyidina Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Whoever says this hadith once, Allah frees a fourth of him. Whoever says it twice, Allah frees half. Whoever says it 3 times, 3/4. And whoever says this beautiful words 4 times, Allah quote unquote frees all of him, all of himself. So may Allah give us the tawfiq to appreciate and to value and to really understand the depth of these beautiful prophetic words, and may they reach our hearts and may we be reflections of the prophetic lights and the prophetic path. وَاعْلَمُوا يَا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَنَا بِأَمْرٍ بَدَأَ فِي بِنَفْسِهِ فقال إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم أعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين اللهم كن لإخواننا المسلمين في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها اللهم اغفر لنا وللمسلمين والمسلمات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات مغفرة ظاهرة وباطنة سرا وعلانية لا تغادر لنا ذنبا ولا نكتسب بعدها خطيئة ولا إثما إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر